Thank you for tuning in to the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like the material. Recently, I covered the complaint of Deborah Hines from her attorneys in regards to her rape at Bethel, and also covered the legal response from Watchtower in regards to her case. One of the biggest questions that I've received is, how on earth does a child get abused at Bethel when you have to be 19 in order to enter? There are no children at Bethel, correct? Well, that's not true, and today I'm going to show you how. But I'm going to do so while giving you a tour of my old home at Watchtower Farms. So if you notice, this is 800 Red Mills Road that we're entering. This is driving up on the main road, which I drove for 10 years. If you notice over to the right, this house, I'm not totally sure. This might belong to a person that Jehovah's Witnesses would consider as being worldly. Although I want to think that they owned it, I'm not sure. But this house for sure is owned by Jehovah's Witnesses. Single family home. This house here to the right, you see, this house is owned by Jehovah's Witnesses. So not only do they build the great compounds, right, they also purchase a lot of single family homes in the local area. But if you notice over here, this is the main lobby, and this is the printing factory in the rear. So here's a side view of the big printing factory. The tractor trailers would drive down this strip to deliver paper, and they would back into the dock. For about a year and a half, I was the overseer of the lobby, and my responsibility was to check in the gentlemen, about 100 gentlemen who came from Germany to install the printing presses in the factory. They would arrive in the morning around 8 a.m. and leave around 6. Our responsibility was to feed them and to make sure that everyone stayed safe, because these individuals were not Jehovah's Witnesses. In the back here, you see this building. That's the C building. And over here you see the parking garage. At Bethel, in order to get a bigger room, because usually your rooms start off around 200 square feet, and when I first came in, it was 3-men rooms, right? In order to get into the C building, you would need probably 5 to 7 years of seniority, and you could bid on these rooms. Okay, so over here on the right, you'll see we used to pick blueberries. So you might work your regular assignment from 8 to 5. And sometimes you would have to go after work and pick blueberries. Can you imagine that? Did it all for the Lord. So this property here is owned by the society, single family residence. A lot of people lived here. So many rooms. You see all the windows, right? If you look back here, this brick building was meat processing. So what would happen here is that they would bring in the cows and the pigs, and this is where they would be slaughtered. They would put the cows and the pigs in these little small chambers so they couldn't run around. And the brothers would take a rifle and they would shoot the cows and the pigs between the eyes. Now the overseer, the big overseer that used to work back here in food processing, he had a very humorous personality. And the overseer was a pretty cool guy also, although the overseers changed throughout the years. But one overseer was very humorous as well. He would allow some of those that worked there, they would put on a mask similar to the movie called Scream. And they would put the mask on and crack jokes, play games, and then they would shoot the cows and the pigs in between the eyes. And then sometimes they didn't die with the first hit, they would have to shoot them again. They also made the hot dogs there, and all sorts of meat were processed there. Moving on. If you look over to the left, this was Bethel office, where Ken Cook used to work for many years, and also Troy Snyder. You'll see those guys a lot on the broadcasting. Also, Ralph Walls, who was my overseer for a time period, had a little small office in this building. Right here where you see this door, this was the entrance to the auditorium. This is where we would go every Monday night for Watchtower study, and also any other important meetings that would come up along the way. Moving on. If you notice this building here to the left, this was the E building. This is the building in which I lived for 10 years. And I lived in E221, which is right here, roughly, right next to where you see the windows are. That's the library for the E building. In the basement of this building is where we had the main dining room. So one of the reasons I enjoyed the room is because I could sleep a little later, perhaps, and then run down to morning worship. When we worked during the day, in order to go to lunch, we would have to change back into shirt and tie or shirt and look formal enough to attend lunch. So for me to go back to my room, change, go to lunch, go back to my room, change, go back to work, this room was very conducive. When I first came to Bethel, I had 2 additional roommates, and the room was 200 square feet. And just to tell you a quick story, I had this one roommate, one of my first roommates, in the winter time, he wanted to have the windows open. And being a new Bethelite, I didn't even really want to complain. So that was a big adjustment, moving from Virginia. And now I'm staying in a room with a guy I don't really know well, who leaves the window open during the winter time. But anyway, that's just a little side point. Moving on, another story that would be beneficial for any Bethelite that follows my channel. There was a Bethelite that used to go to strip clubs at night. Not all the time, but sometimes. And the way he got caught is, you see this little gate? This is an automatic gate, and they came out with a little clicker that you have to click in order to enter. Most Bethelites don't realize that when you click this gate, it alerts Bethel office. So if they ever need to go back to see who clicked at a certain time, they could easily do it. And so that's how they were able to note that this brother was coming in at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they questioned him about it. And also, they had a brother follow him to where he was going before they questioned him. And he was disfellowship. I guess he confessed to other things as well. What I also like to point out is that if you look here with Google, it says Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. So, very interesting. Here is where the allegations took place, where you hear the rumors of the Bethelite that was sleeping with the animals or having sex with the animals. That occurred here at this location. Over here is the mechanic station right behind this building. And remember the case that I shared of Jesus Cano? Well, he was a mechanic that worked here, and he took a vacation day and he was down in Middletown trying to sleep with, I believe the news article says, a 12-year-old. over here you have the A building, and I think those rooms are smaller than the 200 square feet that I mentioned. I never really wanted to live there because you would have to walk every day all the way over to the E building just to go to morning worship. If you have to go back during the day for lunch, it would just take too much time to do all that. So you have a few office buildings, and I believe this building is a residence home. Back here used to be the old resource recovery, which now they moved it. You see another home here. They also own this house. Okay. And this was the water treatment center over here for the clean water. In one of my previous videos, I talked about a governing body member who was drunk once. It was at a log cabin, or one of the cabins that's on this road. That happened many years ago. Now, back here, Watchtower owns all this property, and you can see we're far from the main complex, right? This is the new resource recovery. So if you're currently a Jehovah Witness and you would like to buy old tools, vacuums, all sorts of things, they sell it right online. They have a website where they sell it right to the public. So you could actually buy goods from Bethel. You could buy the tractor trailers. You could buy the work vans. You could buy the work tools. Just a little research online, and you could figure that out. Also, this is where they bury the Bethelites. Remember the video that I stated that when you come in, at least on my second day, you have to sign a document that say, hey, in the event of death, they own your body. They call this area the launch pad, and I guess that originated because the anointed think they go to heaven. So launch pad, get it? And one final point I'll bring out is this. Okay, so just for the record, here's my letter that shows that Jehovah's Witnesses is a religious order. You see that? Religious Order of Jehovah's Witnesses. Here's a vacation notice that you have to sign at Bethel. I shared this on another video. Here's the Dwelling Together in Unity book that I have. I have 3 copies that were updated. And here you'll see this is a Bethel directory we used to use to contact the different departments and different people, that work there. Now, getting back to our little tour, I just want to show you one more thing. There was a brother, this is the grapevines, right? We used to come here periodically to pick grapes, but there are people that work there every day or work out into the fields, right? But there was a little brother that used to work there, and his wife, I think he was every bit 90 years old. And so he had a few people that work with him, as well as they would choose people from different areas, as well as if you are a temp worker, in other words, you come to Bethel just to work for 3 months, then they could put you out here picking grapes. One day, the little old brother, and this is all documented. One thing I just want to point out is that anything that I share on my channel, I can prove it. If I deem it worthy enough to have to prove it, I have the receipts. But anyway, one day he was working out in the field. He had been at Bethel for 50, 60 years. Can you imagine that? Little old fragile brother. And he walks out into the grapevine and he finds 2 married individuals committing adultery. They were having sex in the great bushes. Can you believe that? The wife had only been at Bethel, the woman, had only been at Bethel maybe 2 to 3 days, because I remember her and her husband coming in from Florida. The husband had been at Bethel, the separate husband had been at Bethel. I think he was there 15 years, and he was married to a nice sister. The sister was disfellowship, and she was announced the next morning. She was sent away along with her husband that worked in, I believe, construction. The other husband that was engaging in sin with her, who was already a Bethelite, a regular Bethelite, he was disfellowship, but his wife was allowed to stay at Bethel. I was shocked. I would have never imagined that was possible for your mate to get cast away, disfellowship announced, and your wife gets to stay at Bethel. What's also amazing is that sister who stayed behind at Bethel, she later got married to another brother that was a Bethelite. Maybe 5 years later, I saw it all happen. 5 years later, she married another brother who was married to a sister who cheated with a single brother. I'll tell you the story. We would go shoot basketball at 5 o'clock in the morning. So the husband, right, I know it's a little confusing, but the husband would come and shoot basketball with us. While he was shooting basketball with us, a single brother was going to his room, sleeping with his wife. That single brother was disfellowshipped and sent away. That brother that was shooting basketball with us, his wife was disfellowshipped and sent away. He stayed at Bethel. So, in a 5-year span, the brother whose wife was cheating with while we were playing basketball, he married the wife of the brother that was sent away for sleeping with somebody in the grapevines. I know it sounds confusing, but it was very confusing. This story about the old brother that found the couple committing adultery in the grapevines. After that happened, there was a joke at Bethel. We were all calling them Adam and Eve because they were naked in the bushes eating the fruit or smashing the fruit. But anyway, another joke that came up, and one that I created, is that whenever I mention or talk about sex, I would always say smashing the grapes. So anyone that knows me know that this is where that story or that phrase originated from. So I'll tell you a funny story. One day the old brother was standing in the E building, which I showed you, down by the commissary where we go to buy different knickknacks and milk or whatever. And he was explaining. The brother was very hard of hearing, so he talked really loud. And I guess one of the Bethel elders was talking to him and asked what had happened. They were just having a conversation informally. And I heard the old brother, it was so embarrassing, so loud. He was like, "Yeah, I saw them naked, and he smacked her honey." And man, I never forget, we had to go around the corner. There's a bunch of single guys, we just went around the corner. We were laughing. It was hilarious the way he said that, and everybody was around. It was funny. All right, so in conclusion, I just want to show you one final point in regards to going back to Deborah Hines, right? All right, so I'm going to use this house as an example in the case of Deborah Hines. Many people want to know, how would a child be at Bethel? Well, here's an example. When the governing body needs doctors, lawyers, people with special skills like Deborah Hines' father, who was a videographer, right? They invite them to come serve at Bethel. Usually these men are well established and they make plenty of money. So in order to have them come serve at Bethel, they allowed them to bring their whole family. So in the case of Deborah Hines, her stepfather was a major video film producer to some effect, according to court documents. So they would come to Bethel for 3 months or so at a time throughout the year. While they were at Bethel, her stepfather, according to the court documents, allegedly was raping her at Bethel, as well as urinating in her mouth. How disgusting. As a minor, right? According to the court documents, her mother was a drunk, allegedly. So poor Deborah Hines was going through a lot. You could only imagine. Deborah Hines, according to the court documents, her job at Bethel at some point was operating the elevators, so I assume it happened in Brooklyn, Bethel. Now, in the court documents, it states rooms because usually in Brooklyn with all the high rises, there wouldn't be properties like which we had at Walk Hill. There would be rooms. So they stayed in the same room, which was against Bethel policy. And after she made her complaint, then she was moved out of the room according to court documents. So that brings up a very key point here. Why would it be Jehovah's Witnesses' fault if her stepfather was doing this to her? Well, she complained to various brothers and explained, listen, this man is doing this to me. And so according to the court documents, they did nothing. She even talked to one of the governing body members, Gerrit Losch. So it's very interesting in harmony with this case to see if Gerrit Losch gets deposed. If this case goes to trial, then we're going to learn a lot about the inner workings of Jehovah's Witnesses. The main focus here is that Deborah Hines gets justice. And that's what we want to see. We want to see her get justice for all the deplorable things that happened to her in her life, and especially while she was at Bethel. No one heard her cry. And that's terrible. Deborah Hines represents a lot of people. With the Australian Royal Commission, there was over 1,000 cases of child abuse in the Jehovah's Witness community congregations. We just saw in Chicago 2 elders that were found guilty for covering up child abuse. This is terrible. And if you are a Christian, you should be able to see that no one should be abusing a child. And if you believe in Jesus, right? What did Jesus say about the children? Right? Very serious matter. It's very interesting that Jehovah's Witnesses tend to turn their heads away from this case, or they come up with excuses. One person on Facebook told me, they would have to smuggle a child into Bethel in order for this to happen. We don't believe this. But you see, they lack knowledge about how things work at Bethel. And so that was my point in shedding light on how this happened, and it's right in line with Bethel policy of having families come to Bethel. Children. At Walk Hill, we had a family, a doctor who had his 2 daughters there. I think their last name were Goodwins. So, not that they're involved in any way, but I'm just saying it's a very common thing. The dentist raised a daughter and son. I think at one point the son was like 7 years old. So it's very common. It happened at all three complexes that families came in, doctors came in. They have a lot of weight. Those lawyers over at Patterson, they bring their whole families over because they're needed, right? These are big time attorneys supposedly. But these attorneys, they play dumb and they deny when it comes to child abuse in the organization. They deny. Okay, so hey, you're a smart person, right? What happens if the brothers call you in for a judicial committee and you play the same tactics that Jehovah's Witnesses do when it comes to these child abuse cases, and you say, well, you got to prove it. Oh, I don't know anything. It wasn't me. No, I wasn't there. Who said it? Those elders are going to shred you to pieces, and they won't stop. They're going to hound you and hound you and hound you day after day, right? Until they excommunicate you. But yeah, we get a chance to see Watchtower on the main stage. Deny. We don't know. We don't know who. Yeah, she was there, but it wasn't our responsibility. It was a parent's responsibility. Oh, okay. Well, that person is no longer around, and they like it when the brother's dead. Oh yeah, he died, so yeah, that witness is no good. He can't testify. It's crazy. So you can deny it all you want, but this child abuse thing, it's there, and you better face it now than later. So anyway, subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned because we're going to cover all these cases. And it's very sad but true.